So today we will explore some sounds with the new Trummor FM module from Vult. If you are familiar with the Vult collection, you know that there are two Trummor modules already, right? There is the Trummor 2 and the original Trummor. So now there is a third one, the Trummor FM, which is a sort of a hybrid between the Opolus FM synthesizer, of course, also from Vult, and Trummor 2. Right, also on Trummor FM, we have two sections. We have the oscillator section and we have the noise section. Right, in this case, they are both built out of multiple so-called operators modulating each other's frequency. Right, so in the oscillator part, you can see the algorithm. If you are familiar with FM, this is called the algorithm, right? One is modulating the other, but in the case of the noise section, as you can see here, the operators are also modulating their own frequency as feedback modulation, and this creates the noise. So let's really start building a patch from scratch, exploring some sonic possibilities with Trummor FM. Okay, so here I have clocked from Impromptu that I will use as the main clock. I have, of course, the mind meld mixer. I have here a send reverb with plateau, and I have the cable color key from Inclan, so I will use color coding in this patch. Maybe it will make it easier to follow along. Okay, now we will start with some percussion with the noise section of Trummor FM. I will use Lapsus, also from Vult, to sequence everything. Lapsus is a trigger sequencer. Right, so I will use the first output to trigger only the noise section, right? There is an individual gate input to each section and also an individual output, right? So this will already go to the mixer. I will use a multiplied by 4 clock, right? And the BPM may be around 110, right? And this will go to the clock input of Lapsus. Clocks, triggers, and gates will be blue, right? And also the reset just in case. So now this will be the noise section, right? I can change the level. Let's change the sequence a bit. So the length, I will go with the length of 12 steps. And I will have in those 12 steps for this sequence 5 pulses. Right, so this will be the sequence. Now I can change the envelope. We have an attack, hold, decay, or attack, sustain, and release. Depends on this switch here. For now, I'll take the hold down. Right, and I can change the decay. Right, we can change the tone, which will be a sort of a filter. So low pass to the left, high pass to the right. Right, so we can change and modulate maybe soon the tone, and we can add also body, which will be a sort of a delay or a reverb similar to the one on Opolus, right, which can be also interesting. So let's add modulation and movement, and I will do this with Caudal, which is also from Vult, which outputs smooth random signals. Right, so how we can modulate things, just like on the other Trummor modules, we have here the modulation router. I just click the slot I want to use, and then it says move a control to assign it. So let's say I want to control or modulate the decay. And now I can just connect the cable, open the attenuator, maybe make this quicker a bit. Now we have modulation for the decay. I can make another one for the tone. Right, and another one for the body. Maybe take it somewhere here. Right, so now we have nice modulation, nice movement. I will add a delay to this to make this even more rhythmic, and I will use the tap dancer from Flag. Right, so this sound, this hi-hat sound, will go to the delay. This will go stereo to the mixer, and I will change the tempo to 110, just so it will be synced with the clock. Right, I can add some drive to the input, change the mix a bit, add some ducking, so the delayed signal, the delay line will give space to the original signal. Right, so it will not be too overwhelming. Right, and now it's a bit more rhythmic. And now let's add the bass voice with the oscillator part, right? With the oscillator part of this Trummor FM. So I will use the second output 2 from Lapsus again to the individual input of the oscillator part, and the output will go to the mixer, right? I will have 4 pulses in this case, and I will add some crosstalk just to add some variation. Maybe I will solo this for a second. Right? So we have another sequence. And now I will set this up as a bass. So first of all, I don't want pitch modulation. I don't want to make this too percussive. So I will take the bend all the way down. Right? And now it's more of a bass. And now I can start adding FM. Again, the Trummor FM is all about frequency modulation. So in this case, we have modulators and a carrier. So I can start adding modulation. And I can change the envelope of modulation as well. I can change also the pitch or the frequency of the modulators, right? Or the ratio between the modulator and the carrier, the sound we actually hear. Right, to make this even brighter. Right, maybe something like this. Maybe take the whole down again. Right, and now let's add a bit more movement to the decay. And I will use a clock division. I will use a clock division of 5. I will reset the clock just in case. And now this will be again a green cable. Green cable is modulation. And in this case, I'm using the clock as modulation and not as a clock, because this will bring in the decay. Maybe I can change the tone a bit. Oh yeah. And let's process the sound even more with chorus, with the chorus module also from Vult, and the Briatus for some saturation and fold. Right, so this bass voice will go first to the chorus, and then from there is a stereo voice to the Briatus and to the mixer. I just need a bit more levels here. Very nice. So now let's set chorus as 100% wet chorus. Right, and add some crunch with saturation. Oh yeah, and folding. Yes. Right, now I don't want this to be 100% wet, this chain, the chorus and the Briatus. Right, so I can use the send module also from Vult to transform this into a send effect, right? So the input will come from the bass, the output will go to the mixer. Now we have just the original sound. Right, but I can send this to the chorus and return it from the Briatus. And now I have dry wet control or a blend control, right? So again, all the way right will be 100%. But I don't want 100%. I just want to add this as another layer to the sound. Right, something like this. Oh, very nice. Maybe take the level a bit down here. Right? Very cool. Okay, now let's add more percussion, but using both section of another Trummor FM together, right? So I'm going to use another Trummor FM. And to trigger this, I'm going to use the XOR output of Lapsus, which will basically be a combination of both sequences, but not when they are both playing, right? So we get basically a third sequence. Right, this will go to the main gate input, because in this case I want to use both sections, and the main output will go to the mixer. Right, again, I'm sorry, but I'm going to solo this so we can concentrate on the sound. And now what I will do, I will try to use the oscillator section as the noise and the noise section as the oscillator, because you can really experiment with both sections and get really interesting results, right? So let's start with the oscillator part, right? If I add lots of FM, right? And change the ratio, the multiplication, right? And the tuning. The tone, right? We can really turn this into a noisy, percussive voice instead of just a normal oscillator, right? And now for the noise part, right, again, we have the feedback, which is the feedback modulation. The operators will modulate their own frequency. But if we take this down, right, without feedback modulation, we get basically an oscillator voice. Right, that again, we can change the wave. Right, I can add some FM. I can add some body, change the tone. Right, and again together. Right? Very percussive, but in this case, again, we are using the oscillator as the noise part and the noise as the oscillator part, right? We switch the parts. Let's add some reverb to this. This will be channel 3. Right, and now add even more movement. I'm going to send this through a bandpass filter. I will use tangents also from Vult, right, which has also a bandpass input. And add some modulation to the cutoff with caudal. Maybe add some resonance. Right, I can use also caudal to modulate the panning of this voice. Right, let's unmute everything. Okay, now let's do this. First of all, I would like to split this rhythm from the XOR output into 2 different voices. So for this, I can use a flip-flop. Right, this will be with the gates module from VCV. The sequence will go to the gate input, and now we have flip and flop. Right, we will get half of the sequence from the flip and half of the sequence from the flop. Right, life is nothing but a series of flips and flops. Right, so now we get half of the sequence. Right, and now let's do this. I will mix a copy of both. I will use the VCV mixer of both the bass, right, a copy of the bass and a copy of this voice after the filter. Right, this will go to another tangents. In this case, I will use a high pass filter. Right, and then from the high pass filter, this will go to a delay. I will use in this case the VCV delay. Right, I will sync it with the clock. Right, again, clocks are blue. This I will use, here you can see the delay module has a wet output, which will output only the wet signal, and this is exactly what I want, because we already have the dry signal coming from the modules going directly to the mixer. So in this case, I will use the wet output. Right, I can solo this, take some of the low frequencies out, because again, we have high pass filtering. Right, add some feedback maybe, and lots of reverb. Right, something like this, to add another layer to everything. Right, and now the second output from the gates module, the flop output, we will use with another Trummor FM. Right, so I will use it to trigger the noise section. Right, this will go again to the mixer from the individual output. Right, again, I'm sorry, but I'm going to solo this just so we can concentrate on the sound. Right, and now let's try to create a sort of a snare-like sound from the noise section. Right. Change the tone a bit. I will take the feedback down for a second and turn this into also something more percussive that we can add then later to the noise with the feedback. Right? Something like this maybe. Right, and now I like using some sort of sample rate reduction to create snares and claps to add more layers to them. So what I will do, I will use the random module from VCV. This is basically sample and hold, right? And the output will go from the step output, so from the sample and hold output. And the signal that will be sampled will be the snare sound, right? And now when I take the rate all the way up, right, we get basically a sample rate reduction sound. But again, I don't want this to be 100%, so I can use, or 100% wet, I can use another send module, again from Vult, to add this as another layer. Right, so the output will go from the send module, the input will come from the snare, and I can send this to the sample and hold and return it from there. And now I can add this as another layer with the blend control. Right? So we have a bit more of a clap snare-like sound, again without. And now with. Right, just adding a bit more body to this sound. And now I want this to have also a gated reverb. So for this I'm going to use plateau. I'm going to send this sound first through plateau. Let's set up the reverb. Right. Something like this. And now with the clear function, there is also a video all about this on my channel. With the clear function, I can turn this into a gated reverb. Right, basically clearing the buffer. So what I will do, I will use the flip sequence, right? We have flip and flop. I will use the flip sequence to do this for me. And we have a gated snare reverb. Right. Now let's add a kick drum, a stable 4-on-the-floor kick drum with another Trummor FM. Yes, it's also great for kick drums, FM-like kick drums, but not only. I will use the main clock for this, and this will go to the mixer. Let me just, again, I'm sorry, but I'm going to solo this just so we can concentrate on the sound. Right, again, I can add some FM. Listen to this kick. Right. And add some of the noise section. Right, something like this. Right, a nice kick drum. Let's mix things a bit. Right, I will take the bass just a bit down. Maybe bring the kick drum a bit up. Right, just mixing things a bit. By the way, people ask me a lot why I use the gain feature and not the faders on the mixer. Is just because I'm used to other platforms like DAWs and stuff like this for gain staging, just making sure that no sound is going to other modules or other processing when it's too hot, right? So I like, or too loud, I like bringing down the levels right at the beginning, at the input stage, but you don't have to do this, of course. Right, maybe just a bit more. Right, so now we have this. We have also a kick. Now I don't want the kick and the bass, if I solo them, right? I don't want the kick and the bass to play together, but I don't want also to use sidechaining or ducking, right? So another solution we can do is we can use Logic, right? And I'm going to add the Logic module here. I'm going to use the Boolean Logic module from Bog Audio, right? We can use Logic to make sure no two voices will play together, right? So the kick drum triggers, a copy of them will go also to the not input on the Logic module. So now from the not output, we will get a gate whenever the kick drum is not playing, right? And now if we combine this gate together with the sequence of the bass will play only when the kick drum is not playing, and for this we can use AND logic. So again, we have one trigger or one output that will output a gate whenever the kick drum is not playing, right? The second signal will come from the sequencer for the bass, and now from the AND output we will get a gate only when the kick drum is not playing and the sequence of the bass is playing. So basically the bass will play only when the kick drum is not playing. Right, so now the kick drum has more space. We are not using sidechaining, we are not using ducking. Right, but now we have a bit more space, so to fill in the gaps, we can again mix a copy of the bass with a mixer. Right, I will mix a copy of the bass. In this case, I will mix it with a copy of the kick drum as well, and this will go to another delay, another tap dancer delay. Again, already I will take the mix all the way up because we have already the dry signal, right? This will go to the input. From the output, we'll go to another channel, right? I will solo this as well. Again, change this to 110 so it's synced. Maybe add some high pass filtering. We don't need low frequencies in this channel. And again, add some ducking. Right? Some drive. Some reverb. This will be channel 7. Again, just as another layer. Oh, yes. Okay, now let's quickly add another constant hi-hat, but with a bit of swing, and I will use both sections of another Trummor FM as a sort of a stereo sound. So I will add another Trummor FM. Again, I will solo this just a second. I will use another clock output, right, to gate both sections. This will be again multiplied by 4. But in this case, with clocked, I can add some swing. So let's add maybe like 15. Reset everything once again. And now I will not use the main output because I want a stereo hi-hat. So I will use the individual outputs left and right. You can hear it's already swung. Right, let's start with the oscillator part. Again, turn it into something a bit more noisy. Right, something like this. Right? This will be the oscillator part. Now the noise part is a bit easier because it's already noisy. Right, something like this. Mix both of them as a stereo hi-hat, as you can hear. Right, and now I can modulate the decay. Oh, this is nice. Modulate the decay individually. Right, so one modulation for the decay of the noise, one modulation for the decay of the oscillator, and again this will come from caudal, right? So I can take the modulation from caudal, and this will create nice movement in the stereo field. Maybe it's just a tad too loud here. Let's see. Right? Again, without and with. So it's adding quite a lot to the mix. Now let's add a melodic voice. We can use Trummor FM also as a melodic melodic voice, melodic sound. In this case, I will use another sequencer from Vult. This is Anima. Right, again, I will clock it with the main clock and make sure everything is running together with a reset. Right, I will add another Trummor FM. Right, I will use the gate to gate both sections, and the pitch, we need also a quantizer. In my case, you don't have to use a quantizer, of course, but I would like to stay in a certain scale. So the pitch will go to the quantizer, and from there to the pitch input of both sections. Both of them will follow 1 volt per octave, and the output will go to the mixer. Let me just solo this, and let's create a sequence and change the sound a bit. Right, so I can quickly create a sequence with Anima. Right, and let's change the sound. Let's again concentrate on the oscillator part. I will take the bend down, maybe zoom in a bit, take the quantizer up an octave. Right, in this case, we have also again the switches to attack, sustain, and release, and now the hold button the hold knob becomes sustain level. Right, so what we can do, and I will do this in a second. Right, I'm just changing the sound a bit. We can change also the wave. Right, so what we can do to take advantage of this sustain stage, we can modulate the gate length, again with the gates module from VCV. So the gate will go to the gate input of the gates module. From the gate output will go back to the Trummor FM. And now if I have a longer gate, right, we have the sustain stage, right? So also this we can modulate with caudal to add even more movement. Right? Something like this. And again, let's change just the sound here a bit. And add the noise section without feedback, because I want this again melodic. Right, something like this. Maybe also here change the wave, add some body, just for fun. Maybe take this an octave down. After all. Right, so now we have another melodic voice. Let's add some reverb and see how it sounds like in the context of the whole patch. Right. Just adding some FM. Right, we can also modulate the panning here with caudal. Right, maybe make this a bit darker, actually take the tone down. Right, that's why it's coming in and out. Right, now another thing I want to show you is how you can get interesting sounds just by randomizing Trummor FM. Right, so if I use another Trummor FM, I will clock it again or gate it again with the main clock. Right, now let me send this to the output already and solo this again. Now actually I don't want this to play all the time. I want this to have probability, so I can use something like chances from count modular to add probability to this clock signal. Right, and now in the right-click menu, I can choose what I would like to randomize. So for example, if I just want to randomize the oscillator part, if I hold Control, I can deselect both the modulation part and the noise part. Right, and now when I choose randomize or when I click Control R, right, it will randomize only the oscillator section. Oh yeah, and I can get interesting sounds. But I will add also the noise section. Right, let's add already some reverb here. Right, just for fun. And let's try and randomize this a few times and see what we can get interesting. Alright, take the levels down a bit, maybe take off the low frequencies. Right, something like this. Right, so you can also experiment with the randomize functionality of VCV. Right, and try and experiment and create interesting percussive sounds or melodic sounds. Right, and that was it. Trummor FM is a great addition to the Vult collection. I hope you will go and explore it in your patches. It's available for free, but if you want to support Vult, consider getting one of his commercial collections. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks again for watching. Cheers.